welcome to the Double Shot podcast, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.
I want to talk about U-turns because I think we've all dealt with U-turns, whether it's in our career or particularly in our personal life. They can be a little bit scary. Give me an insight into the biggest U-turn that's happened in your life, whether it was career or personal.
Yeah, I mean, a U-turn, YO U-turn to me is that critical moment of transformation where you get radically honest with yourself about some area of your life that isn't working. And instead of, silencing that voice that's telling you to make a change, you honor it. And so I would say the biggest U-turn I ever made was when I worked in counterterrorism at the Pentagon. I was in my early 20s. And I had worked so hard to get there. I learned Arabic. I became bilingual in French. I learned the language of Dari. And I went to the best graduate program I could in the UK. I did everything to prepare myself. I really invested in my career. And it wasn't until I found myself on a military base holding a gun that I realized that I am way too sensitive to be in this career path and that I would never be willing to use it. And you'd think that would be obvious, but at 23 years old, we don't really know who we are. It's almost like in our careers, what we're doing as a society to people is the equivalent of saying, the first person you have a crush on in preschool, marry them. That's what we're doing in our careers. We're saying the first thing that you pick as a path, grow it, without really having regard for the reality that you are really an experimental person and your career is a vehicle for you to figure out who you are, and one of many vehicles. And you can't find out who you are unless you're willing to experiment. So for me, making the choice to leave the Pentagon after doing all of that work to get there, really looking at myself in the mirror and starting from what felt like square one, saying, what are my skills? What am I good at? Where can I make an impact? And allowing myself the dignity. I think there's a dignity to everyone has the dignity of their own process. There's a dignity to rock bottom. There's a dignity to allowing yourself to be where you are. And where I was having no idea what was next for me, but in those questions and in those conversations, not just with myself, but with the world around me. And ever since, whenever my career feels like it's plateauing, what I do is I just tell myself, well, if things are feeling flat right now, I just need to have more conversations. I think conversations are a gateway to clarity. And so anytime I feel flat, I feel lost, I ask myself every morning, who can I have a conversation with today? Is it someone new? Is it someone I already know? Is it someone in line at the grocery store? All I need to do is put my iPhone away and get present and be someone who's willing to connect. And there's so much that I learn through having that mindset. And it was through conversations that I was able to leave the Pentagon, get to know new people, and find a new career path for myself.
And even reading your book, going into it, I thought U-turns, they're scary because oftentimes we ignore the signals. And you talk about, the fact that we've got to try not to ignore the signals. What are some tools we can use to make sure that we don't turn a blind eye to those signals that are sitting there telling us we've probably got to make that U-turn?
Yeah, I think there's really three key pieces of the puzzle that I look at with career. The first thing is the what. And the what has to do with what are your skills, what's your natural gift, which we've spoken a bit about. The second is the how. And I think this is where people can tune in to whether they're happy or not. The how is about your core values. Given that 50% or more of people leave their jobs because they don't like their boss, what we can assume to be true is that how your job looks matters just as much as what your job is. So most people who aren't happy in their job are either not using their core skill set, so they're kind of pushing a river in their day-to-day life. They're being someone else. They're residing in a skill set that doesn't come naturally to them, that isn't naturally what they're gifted at. Or a core value is being violated. All of us have different core values. To me, one thing that I explore in my book, U-Turn, is a core value is a non-negotiable principle by which you live your life. So my core values are fun, spirituality, self-actualization, connection. All these different words represent who I am. And a lot of people, let's say, someone listening has a core value of integrity. And let's say that their best skill set is communication. So they work in sales, they're using their communication, they're extroverted, they're loving that side of it, but they really hate their job. Why? Maybe it's not because of the skill set they're using. Maybe they're using the right skill set, but it's how they're using it, meaning there's an issue with their core values. Maybe they're selling something they don't believe in, and that's infringing on their core value of integrity. Maybe they're working too many hours, and that's infringing on their core value of balance or health or wellness and wanting to have time to go to the gym. I think it starts with getting really honest with yourself, not about words that represent who you want to be more of, but words that represent who you are as core values. Far too often, people are very aspirational when picking their core values. They look at themselves in the mirror and they say, well, I value peace. And, I had one client who was an attorney, and we both laughed because I said to her, I don't really know if you're the most peaceful person. I don't know if that's a core value for you. I think that's an aspiration that you have, which is great to know, but, not something that's a core value. So I think it's really important for anyone to reflect on what are they great at? What is their skill set? Are they working in it? If not, what can they do to kind of take initiative and start using that skill set? And B, what do they really value? What's non-negotiable for them? How can they use that as a filter for their yeses and their nos in their lives? And then the third piece of the puzzle is your energy levels. Are you an extrovert or are you an introvert? Some people will have the same skill, but one person who's an extrovert is going to want to use that externally. Take me, for example. I am a speaker and I'm a writer. So I lean towards extroverted, but I'm also quite introverted. I'm pretty like 51-49. It's important to know those things so that when you look at your career, if you're an introvert and you're a words person like me, you probably want to be behind a laptop, living that coffee shop life, which I've totally done and ended up missing being out there and being with humans. So, I think your energy levels are also the third key ingredient to making a U-turn.
And you've got a great little quiz on your website. We'll put some link to that in our notes to the pod. I want to ask: is core values the same as passion, or are they different?
I think they're different. I think a passion is something that you're interested in, and we have a lot of interests. I think a passion is an interest really come to life. So for me, a passion is fashion. I love style. I live in New York City. Every time I turn around, there's a new fashion statement in the street. There was a sunny day for the first time the other day, and it was almost like everyone just came out of their closet. And so that's a passion for me. I'm interested in politics, but what I found working in it was that it just was meant to be an interest and not a passion. Core values are principles, like family, like authenticity, like balance, like inspiration. So they're much deeper than a passion or an interest. They're an innate way that you carry yourself and a part of your being in the world, whereas a passion is something you carry out and do.
And then one other thing that I loved in your book is talking about whether a goal is truly something that you want to achieve. What are some tools we can use to figure out if a goal we've set is something we actually want to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken a lot about the gut and how scientists call it the second brain because it has 200 million neurons, which is the size of a cat or dog's brain. So I think how something feels is something that we often discount. So instead of just looking at an opportunity and saying, wow, this is an amazing opportunity, really ask yourself, well, how do I want to feel? And how does this make me feel? I think people far too often make their life about achievements and not about their feelings. And I think because of that, there's a lack of fulfillment across the board.
Very good. And I'll round this one out to sort of probably connect back to that first question I asked. If we're making a U-turn, often the challenge, whether it's starting a new career or even someone who's young starting out in a career, we don't have experience. That's the gap that no matter what we do, we can't get experience if we don't have it. You talk about, experience gap and overcoming that. What's a way that we can look at experience and use our lack of experience to our advantage in our career?
Yeah, I would say there's many different ways for you to create experience. There's a lot of nonprofits right now that are strapped, and instead of giving them your money, you can volunteer 3 hours a week and contact them and say you have 3 extra hours a week. You would love to volunteer and offer yourself up in the skill set you want to build. That's something you can put on your resume. That's something that you can do to position yourself. This is also an incredible time to be upskilling. Ask yourself, what does the direction you want to go require of you? What skill do you need to be learning? And then give yourself a permission slip to learn online. There are so many free resources, LinkedIn Learning, Coursera. Even with me, we have free courses on my website. There's so much free opportunity to learn, and taking that time to upskill, I think is really, really key. The best-selling book Sapiens, the number one argument is that the top skill you need for today's world and the future is the ability to reinvent yourself, to be adaptable. And a lot of that comes down to your willingness to upskill.
Very good. Thank you so much, Ashley. We'll put a link to your book, your website, your TED Talks, all the fantastic resources, your podcast that we've got. We really appreciate you making the time to be with us today. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Double Shot with your favourite cousins, Alex and James Fitzgerald. If you've got a burning question or something we absolutely need to talk about on the pod, please write to us. Both of our emails are in the show notes. For little real estate tidbits and a little bit of banter, okay, a lot of banter, you can follow us on the gram. Our handle is thedoubleshot.podcast. That, my friends, is thedoubleshot.podcast. Until next time, think of us when you sit back and sip your next double shot.